meeting. We had a very impromptu conversation back in December, and this will just kind of be the beginning of hopefully many conversations with this community. But just a couple guidelines. It'd be great for you guys to stay engaged. I'm not able to see everybody yet, but maybe that's just my screen. But I think we'll be just connecting here on questions. Please feel free to send them in the Q&A and we'll review them. We're going to have a panel, and so that would be a great opportunity for you all to ask questions. And then I will also kick us off as well, and you guys can ask questions there. But kind of just like, you know, the goals for the CMX Connect is just for us to connect, for us to learn each other, and obviously just to grow the industry. So Kat, Kristie, and I kind of connected on the CMX Slack community on just like customers advisory boards. And from that, you know, we're not pros at this, but we want to get there. And so I think with this community, we can eventually become pros. So like, let's build together and let's learn together. I wanted to share just like, you know, we have in the first meeting, we did kind of come up with some rituals that we can get familiar with. And like the first is we have a Google sheet that maybe Kat, if you don't mind sharing that Google sheet, but in this Google sheet, you'll see 2 tabs. And in the 2 tabs, you'll be able to introduce yourself and kind of write who you are, where you're calling from, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, if you feel comfortable sharing that. And then we have kind of like a give and take. So like, what's something that you want to share with this community? Like, what's something that you feel like you're really good at, or maybe you've had an experience, or maybe you even had like a challenge. Like, I learned so much through that challenge that I'm going to share my experience with others so people don't fall under the same thing. Like, we're here to hear all of that. And or take. So what would you like to learn from others as well? And if you can help us by filling out those 2 tabs, figure out like who could we reach out to as we build out more of these events, and like who's someone that we could potentially tap into. So please help us there. And obviously, if you aren't on the community that we have in Slack, it's #customer advisory board. And you guys there. And then that we can also pull from that area as well. Okay, so what's our agenda for today? Obviously, here we are doing our intros and welcomes. But next, we're going to pass and Kristie, and we're going to do kind of like a panel style where we'll be asking a couple of questions on like what are some lessons that they learned a new customer advisory program at their organizations. And then following that, we're going to jump into how to do a proper post-event retro, which whenever I was writing out the presentation, I realized like, how does this apply to CAB? And I'd love to kind of show you what we did here at ThoughtSpot after our last CAB event, and hopefully you guys can incorporate some of those practices next time. Beth wasn't able to make it. We'll definitely have her on a rain check. So then we'll just be closing off a little bit earlier than we were originally attending to. So who's our speakers? Ola, it rhymes with Ola or Crayola if it helps. And I'm out of Dallas, Texas. I work for ThoughtSpot, and I'm head of community and customer advocacy. And Kat, would you like to introduce?
Happy to. Hey everyone, my name is Kat Martinez. I'm one of our senior managers overseeing our community programs here at ThoughtSpot. I actually report directly to Paola, so you're seeing our strong team of 2 over here for the ThoughtSpot community, and excited to be chatting with all of you here. Kristie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for that. And my name's Kristie Kaaa. So I'm a senior CSM here at Bevy, and I lead the cab that we have here at Bevy.
Thank you too for joining us for this first round. So we're going to go ahead and just get right into the panel, which will be really exciting. So I'm going to actually stop sharing so you could see. And we're going to go ahead and just ask a couple questions, but feel free to also throw in anything that you have and would like to learn after these. I'm going to ask we'll open it up to the floor. But Kristie and Kat, my first question to you is, when you started building out the CAB program, during that building phase, was there any particular teams that you aligned with to gain like internal buy-in for the program, or just motivations that they may have? Maybe Kristie, we can start with you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a majority of you folks know, but Bevy is still kind of in the startup phase of its organization. So last year we really focused on making sure that we have a solid foundation internally, but we always knew that the goal was in 2022 to start working with customers more outside of their regular cadence with their CSMs or their account teams. So it started out as an idea from our SVP of customer success. And really the purpose there was bringing to the table the success that she saw with it at her past organizations. After that, we got the approval from the COO, who she reports into. And at Bevy, the CAB is an initiative that's in partnership both by CS and by marketing. So Marsha's on the call as well. And so she's my co-lead on the initiative, and we work together in our respective our departments. And then with that, we certainly got buy-in from product because we knew that attendees, that was going to be a big point for them as to why they joined. The executive team, keeping them in the loop. CMX, which, this group here, how do we make sure that we are integrating the CAB into the overall community for community professionals? And then lastly, our sales team. So we worked with them when we were deciding the criteria and the nominations.
What about you, Kat? I know you have probably a lot to share from our quick journey from a CAB development.
Yeah, I mean, this journey for developing the CAB, it started back in August / September. So our chief development officer, who oversees our engineering, product management, and InfoSec team, he approached our community team to help launch this customer advisory board. And similar story to Bevy's executive sponsor, they understood the value that a CAB would bring to an organization, not only value from a product standpoint, but really to enhance the rapport that we have with our key customers that we were hoping to invite and giving them a seat at the table here. So once we met with Mr. And got his internal buy-in and his vision as an executive sponsor, he really shared with us, what he was hoping to achieve with the program and partner with us here. So the key partner that we were partnering with here was the product leader there. And with his partnership, we drafted documentations to support the vision that he had for this program. And those documentations started with a member charter, program overview, code of conduct, and more. But to really ensure that we were building a program that was not only supported by product, but across various departments, we started building a CAB steering team that composed of teams from team leaders and stakeholders from our product marketing, sales, customer success, marketing, executive. So really across the departments, we had all of the people involved to make sure that they were aware of what the program would bring to the organization, what it would do for their sub teams, and making sure that they were involved, similar to Bevy, a part of the criteria in attendance, and ensuring that our members here felt like they were really partnering with us, ThoughtSpot here, going into the new year if they were selected.
Totally. And I think, this is like a ad hoc question, but if I could give you like one word as to like what's like the main goal for your CAB, like Kat, like what would that one, like, or maybe I'll give you 3 words, like 3 words that you could say, like what's the main like focus? Because I feel like CABs are very like, they're either for like improving customer relations or they're either for something else. So Kat, like just based off of your stakeholders that you like talked about, like what would you say of the CAB?
Yeah, for some of the words that come top of mind is true partnership, because that's what we wanted our members to feel. We didn't want them to feel like they were just attending an event and we were checking off our list. We really wanted to ensure that what they were bringing to us when they were talking to our leaders, that everyone on those events was hearing them. And the next, I guess it's a 2-word there, would be product innovation. We want to make sure that we as a company are hearing our CAB members and making sure that we're building in the direction that they hope to grow their businesses as they're building on data. So we wanted to make sure that, what they bring to the table or what we present to them from a product strategy was innovating and helping them be successful here. So I guess in summary would be partnership and product innovation was really the main focus of our CAB here.
Yeah, I would say ours, I was thinking partnership as well. So a lot of the customers that we have, and certainly on this call, have been with us for several years and have been through experiences of, how we take our product feedback and we consolidate that. And we've shifted how we do that several times, right? So we wanted to make sure that this group understood that they were heard, that by the proper stakeholders, and that we really valued their partnership. I think another piece too is engagement as well. So we learned that members are really wanting a space where they can network with other Bevy customers too. So similar to, the opportunities that CMX presents for community professionals as a whole, we wanted to make it a little bit more narrowed and focus on customer to customer.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. Thanks for taking my ad hoc question there. My second question is, what criteria did you and the team establish to help select your final CAB members, if there was any?
Yeah, I'll take that, Kat, and you can go first on the next one. So when we first started this initiative and collecting nominations, we worked with the account teams. So that touches sales, CS, and support. What we did was we broke up nominations into 2 categories. So we had an operator level, which are typically managers, directors, and who are in the product likely every day, right? So those are our power users. Those are a lot of the times the folks that we have the strongest connection with, relationship with. So that was one group. And then we also created another list of nominations that were solely executives. So think VP plus, CMOs, those type of relationships as well. We have only so far moved forward with the operator. The executive, we really wanted to do more in person, and given the current landscape, that's not an option today. But so focusing solely on the operator, we built a little bit of a criteria as to what we were looking for. So some of that being they needed to be a customer with it of at least 6 months. Onboarding with Bevy, we need them at the beginning to really be honed in on getting their accounts up and running. So we didn't want to distract from that. So that's why we had that 6-month mark. Then we wanted to leverage those customers that are really vocal and open and honest with their feedback already. So that was something that we were looking for, as well as after we had that general list of those nominations, we vetted that against our company-wide top 20 accounts. We made sure, one, that we had representation from those, but also that it wasn't just those folks, right? Because we also need insight from, some SMB customers or brand newer customers. So we wanted to make sure that that was spread out. And lastly, we were looking to keep it pretty small. So about 20 to 30 was our class size there.
Yeah, I think on that note, we we understood that we wanted to build the cab, and as much as we would love to have as many customers as possible, we understood that this had to be a small sample size. So the statement, the more the merrier, is not the case for these type of advisory boards. We did not want to invite too many customers because we understand that at times conversations can spiral out, or if you have too many members in the cab, they may not have enough airtime to participate or to voice some of the input and feedback that they would love to share with the product leaders or executives. So we really wanted to hone in on making sure that the list was a sample, but one that could really help us in the direction that we wanted to build our platform. So with the cab being an invitation only, we established a criteria to help us invite some of the some members that would help us build and validate our product. So the criteria that we ended up alongside with our product and cab steering team, we again had to make sure that they were a customer who was either an executive or a practitioner with decision-making authority. Since our platform does end up being used by practitioners, so business users themselves, we wanted to invite those that do utilize our platform every day, but they have a heavy say in the decision-making process with ThoughtSpot in their organization. One thing that we also wanted to ensure is that there was only one representative per organization, and if they were selected, that the membership of this cab was non-transferable. And we made that very known in our member charter, that if someone wanted to transfer their membership to the cab, it had to be approved by our ThoughtSpot team, because we also made sure that we handpicked these people, and we wanted to ensure that we were picking and selecting the right people. The other criteria before we started inviting people was making sure that our list of people were vetted by legal. We made sure that our legal teams actually reviewed our customer agreements to ensure that if they had a feedback clause that did not permit them to provide feedback, that they were not invited or they were not selected to move forward. And lastly, part of our criteria when we did finalize our list was also letting them know what the expectations were. As a member, we told them that they had to be able to participate in our semi-annual cab events and be a part of our cab for 12 months. To help us build that list, we actually opened up to the field team to let us know some nominations that they had in mind when we shared this criteria internally here. One of the lessons that we learned was also to over communicate, saying, you can nominate someone, but please, please, please do not tell them that they are being nominated, because the worst thing you could do is let someone know, yes, you were nominated for cab, and then they're not actually selected. So I think one lesson I learned when building this criteria and building out this list was letting our field teams know very strictly that this is internal process selection right now. But overall, with the criteria and collecting nominations from our field, we made sure that we selected no more than 20 cab members for this first time around.
Yeah, definitely. We, especially in virtual settings, it's a lot harder to have a bigger group discussion. So those are some really great criteria. Hopefully it gives a lot of feedback to people who are watching this and starting to figure out, like, how do I build a criteria? Okay, next question is, once you selected these cab members, like, how did you start structuring your first event? Was there any like tactics that you guys implemented in kind of building out how your first engagement and first impression would be with these members? Yeah, if you want to take this one.
I was hovering slightly over to my mic there, but yeah, when we selected all of our cab members and they accepted our invitation, we started building the agenda for our event with that cab steering team. So everyone within that team, specifically for the product leaders, we worked with them to build an agenda that would be both interactive and informative. So when we selected our members, we actually began to structure a 2-hour virtual event. And since the majority of our members ended up being executives, we wanted to give all of them a heads up well in advance. And I would highly recommend giving everyone a month's notice, especially if your cab has primarily executive members in it, just so that they could accommodate their schedule. And during the nomination process, we also received information from our field team about looping in their EAs. So if you're inviting executives and you want to make sure that this is on their calendar, also reach out to the EA if you're not receiving the communication that you would be hoping to receive when they first get invited. And overall, when we started building this event, we wanted to ensure that the goal was to make it an interactive forum for our CAB members to share feedback, their challenges, some industry trends that they're seeing along the ways of their journey with ThoughtSpot, along with having and being heard by our ThoughtSpot executives and product experts here from our roadmaps, best practices, and product strategy. So we worked diligently with our product leaders to build an agenda. And the way that we ended up formatting our event was that we actually started off by welcoming all of our CABs virtually. We welcomed everyone by kicking off an icebreaker, asking them like, hey, everyone, what's your favorite sports team or concert, and who would you love to go see in person? And, we started seeing a little bit of engagement early on, and then we moved on to our section called our Voice of the Customer. When we were building out this CAB, we wanted to ensure that a majority of the time was really positioning and having the focus on our CAB members rather than ThoughtSpot doing most of the talking. So this Voice of the Customer was led by our Chief Data Strategy Officer. She did an amazing job facilitating the conversation and having each CAB member introduce themselves. I think one of the things that she did phenomenal and that I highly recommend is adding that personal touch to each introduction. We had some folks introducing themselves all the way from Georgia, and then she would share a random fact about Georgia because she took the time to research each customer, where they're coming from. And it really went a long way because the Zoom chats was really highly engaged. There were chats coming along throughout the Voice of the Customer section. And in that section, we asked everyone to introduce themselves and even answer a quick question of, if they were a product leader, what would they do if they were a product leader here at ThoughtSpot? And that actually really helped engage a conversation where our product leaders were actively listening to what folks were saying that they would do as a product leader. So it was not only an interactive forum for people to introduce themselves, we ended up collecting some ideas of where people were thinking ThoughtSpot should go next. And then next, we had some demonstrations led by our product marketing team, and they even went out of their way to make sure that there was extra touches along their demonstrations and presentations with our customers that were a part of the board. They attentively listened and they said, hey, so-and-so, you're a part of this organization, you're utilizing ThoughtSpot for the following. Does this resonate with what you're doing over there? And again, that human element and just going out of their way to research about our CAB members really helped the event go smoothly, and it was well received by our members. And for our event, lastly, we ended up closing it up with our CEO and our co-founders here, who wrapped up the event, thanked everyone for joining, and we ended right on time here, fortunately. So that was a big kudos on the first event that we had. And I think one lesson that we learned was really ensuring that for this event to go smoothly, we also had internal roles assigned here. So people in our CAB steering team, we told them, hey, everyone, our main focus, from department leaders across the board, I know our innate reaction is to respond to something when we hear that it doesn't settle well with us, or we may want to respond immediately. Our focus is to listen and be there and really listen to what our CAB members are sharing with us. Any action items, we will follow up with them immediately after the event, along with internal roles such as a chat moderator, timekeeper, note keeper, screen share, MC, and all of that and more was really crucial in helping us establish this first event and kicking it off smoothly for our CAB program here.
And Kristie, I'll let you answer, and then we will take a question from Danny. That'd be great after.
Absolutely. So because ours was focused more on the operator level, we had a little bit of a different structure for our first event. So Marsha had a field marketing event take place about a month before the rollout, where David Spinks came and kind of, it was an open conversation for the state of community, what you're seeing in the industry. And then we ended that event by teasing the CAB that it'll be rolling out soon. So those people that attended actually were already on the consideration list because we knew they checked the criteria of being willing and open to providing feedback and wanting to learn. So that was before the kickoff took place and kind of gave us a great starting point for the pool that we were going to be pulling from. For our first event, we opened up with our executive sponsors. So our COO, who came from Google and previously Adobe, gave a really short reasoning as to what he's seen as to why cabs are so important. And then we switched it over to our SVP, who kind of gave a rundown of all things that have been happening at Bevy in the past year. So like what I talked about at the beginning of 2021, we focused on making sure we've got the right people in the room. She kind of honed in on that piece. From that, we switched gears and we talked about really like the importance of this group being willing and able to provide us feedback, because it is our first time running a cab, as well as we're in that build phase of infancy, right? So this product feedback is really important to us and will certainly be used. And again, with the consideration that this group has been vetted, and we certainly want to hear from them. So as far as the icebreakers, you mentioned this, Kat, so it just gave me an idea here. We saw tons of success where obviously everyone gave their introductions and we asked like one word to describe their community. And that went like, everyone was super excited about it. People were stealing other people's words, but I think it really like did the trick of breaking the ice. A majority of the event took place in networking rooms on Bevy. So we moved folks, we did randomly, everyone was random in a table, and it was based off of the season that they were born in. And we do have global, so we kind of just said whatever season you're located in, go with that. So we had a spring, summer, winter, fall table. And in those tables, we had 2 Bevy representatives. All of those came from the field team. So we had sales folks, marketing, and CS. One individual was tasked with guiding the conversation, and then the other was strictly a note taker. And we knew that the feedback from these questions were so important because it's going to drive our programming moving forward. So we asked questions like, what time of the day works best for you? But also we showed our 3 pillars of the program. So our 3 pillars are access to Bevy leadership, as well as first looks into product insight, and lastly, like learning from community peers. And from those networking rooms, we learned that networking with peers as well as product feedback is the 2 most important. So that helped us go back to the table when Marsha and I have been planning to say, hey, this takes priority over another guest that may speak at that event. I think one thing that was really important that helped us build credibility was that in our second event, we actually started with an overview of the things that we learned. So really to kind of make sure that everyone who was in attendance knew that like we were taking the kickoff pieces seriously, and that we're really taking the feedback that you have and pushing that forward. So I think that was one lesson that we learned that really went a long way. And we had such great attendance. I think our first event was in the 75% attendance rate, and we knew that we needed to keep that up. So that was an exciting metric for us.
Super exciting. Good tactics. So I wanted to open up the floor. I know we have one question left, but I'd rather also take a couple questions that we're receiving from the audience. So Danny, if you want to, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, I was inspired by what Kat said, but Kristie, I think what you were just discussing is relevant too. I'm interested in, I think all those icebreakers and the getting to know you stuff that you just described are really great, and they're really important. Obviously, as a community person, like connecting people together is important, but I've also seen that type of stuff take a really long time and kind of derail productivity and also like buy-in from attendees on calls like that. So specifically, since you've mentioned engaging an executive audience, did you do anything to time box or keep that short, or how long did it take? And did you see any of the downsides of those introductions at all?
So completely agree with you. From a community manager, I know that what the benefits are of bringing together people, but since this was a different audience, since my in comparison to my typical community user or practitioner, we made sure that we communicated the details of the event, and we prepped them in advance with that question. So leading up to the event, we told them, hey, everyone, you have 90 seconds. This is the question. Please let us know about your name, title, and the question that we posed to them. That is what we told them they would be answering during the voice of the customer section, because we know their time is valuable, and we did not want to go a minute over the time. We time boxed that perfectly to the point where all of the attendees had plenty of time to describe where they're coming from, their name, and they were able to answer that question. So I think if you are going to be building a CAB for the executive audience, let them know what to expect. Very detailed agenda will get them to hopefully understand, this is what's going to be taking place. And if you do plan on doing an icebreaker, make it short, sweet, and to the point, and let them know in advance, because some people may not knowingly go into these knowing that there's going to be an icebreaker here. And that's the one where I see them not even return to another event because they are not looking to ice break. I think the way that we positioned it, they also saw the value of the question because they understood the audience on the executive side at ThoughtSpot that was going to be present. It got to the point where some of our own CAB members had a whole notebook, I kid you not, saying, oh yeah, I did my research, and as a ThoughtSpot product leader, I would do the following. So that made us reassured that we selected the right people, that the communications reached them, and that they're taking this opportunity to talk to our executives and product leaders seriously here. So I hope that was able to answer your question on how I pose and time boxed it there for them.
Yeah, one strategy that we found really helpful, in maybe more suited for operator, but take it or leave it, is we actually moved and got this idea from CMX Summit. So we moved our networking at the very beginning of the meetings. So we allow for 15 minutes. And what we do is we use the breakout rooms functionality. We just do 5 minutes per breakout and do it in groups of 2. So we've got that time, blocked. Also, 5 minutes isn't too awkward. Like we do have a question, where something that they can chat through together. But it's not enough time to we get the feedback that, oh, wow, that 5 minutes went by quick, less than we get oh, we didn't have time to fill the 5 minutes. So, and it sets the tone for the meeting too, which I think is great. People are already, willing to chat, have already chatted with other folks. When they break out, they're with someone else. So we like that strategy.
Thanks, Danny, for the question. That was a good one. Definitely nervous at first, but I think Kat kind of over communicating totally helped, and surprised that everybody was so prepared. But okay, I also had a really good question too that I'd like to ask, which is, what do you think are the 2 to 3 key tactics to consider when launching a CAB for practitioners versus business leaders? I'm not sure who wants to take that one first.
I wrote down some notes. I can go through. So I'll kick that one off. And thanks for the question, Elsa. So I think that the biggest considerations that we've learned, first and foremost, is that those groups are on the same kind of level playing field within their organizations. So although we haven't opened up the executive level CAB just yet, we held back on inviting them to this because, it's kind of different conversations. We're a little bit more in the weeds here. So I think that's the first big takeaway. Also, with the operator level, we do a lot more debriefing on after events with their specific account team. So for example, we use the post-event forms for follow-up questions. Would you like to learn a little bit more about this? are you interested in furthering the conversation related to XYZ? So we're coordinating with the account teams to pass along that information directly so that they can take action on it on their next meeting. And then the last one, for the operators specifically, internally, we receive confirmation from our product team that when we first do product interviews or anything like that, that the cab is the first people that they come to, obviously with our day-to-day contacts. So I think that built credibility with our cab, but it's also streamlined internally. We don't have to have the product team saying, hey, anyone familiar with this that we can talk to? They know exactly what group to go to, which is great.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think when we were building our criteria and finalizing our list of cab members, we naturally saw a lot of the nominations and people identified were executives. So that was the direction that we decided to go with for this cab, was being majority of them being executives. But in the future, when we start segmenting into a cab specifically focused for the business or leaders, so maybe the senior managers and below, they would be probably a part of our technical advisory board, where we are really working with them, putting them in touch with our product leaders to specifically ask about the features and utilizing what they could be seeing in the future here. And that one will probably be more focused on looping them in for early beta testing and really ensuring, what are you doing? What are some things we can improve upon? So the way that we're breaking it up right now is CAB, the customer advisory board. Those are people that have more of the broader perspective of ThoughtSpot being utilized in their organization and just more industry trends that they could bring to our attention. When we build our technical advisory board, that's when we're going to be targeting more of the practitioners so that they could provide any technical insights and feedback, especially around some of the trends that they're hoping to see ThoughtSpot go in the future here. So that's how we're breaking it up, hopefully, in the future.
You too, for all of the great answers. I know I know we have just a couple minutes left, so I will hold on that next question because I think it actually is a good segue into our next topic. So give us a little virtual round of applause for our panelists and everybody who's contributed to asking our questions. Thanks, y'all. Okay, I think this is kind of a good segue into this topic, which kind of is the question that I was going to ask Kat and Kristie, which is, what's one thing that you hope to learn this year as you continue to oversee the CAB program at your organization? And I think, putting together a post-event, or in this case, post-program retro, can be really useful in figuring out, what are the things I want to continue doing in the future? So I wanted to kind of walk through this because this is something that Kat and I are starting to adopt after our CAB in particular, but then also after our annual user conference, for example. So, and I actually do have a template that I wanted to share with y'all as well that I built out, just autonomize it a little bit for everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it into the chat. But if I can get my slides to work. What is an event retro? Retro is short for retrospective. So obviously, continuous ideation is just a very core value of a lot of teams. And I think community managers in particular, right? We want to be able to reflect. We want to be able to share and ideate on how could we improve this experience. There's so many tiny details. And I think whenever realizing hey, this was a struggle, or hey, that worked really well. And sometimes if you don't capture it, then you tend to not maybe remind it, you might forget it later on. And I think another really good thing about this that really helps with a program like the CAB is, as you heard from Kat and Kristie, there's so many stakeholders involved in this program, and everybody might have not seen how much work was required in this, or if they broke any processes as they were in this program. And so this is also a really good way of just uniting everybody after an event and, hey, what was something that we did really well and what's something that we could improve on for next time. So why is it important? Obviously, it just helps us identify any inefficiencies in our process. It's not another Zoom meeting. It's really supposed to be interactive. And I'll kind of share how Kat and I were able to do this for our CAB program, but it also allows us just to reflect, improve, and just be more efficient in the future. So how do you conduct a proper retro? So number one is just preparation. So I sent over that template that you guys could access, hopefully. But what we did beforehand, it's like a doc, and what we did was we broke it down into different sections. And then once we kind of, Kat and I had the doc first, and like as we were building out the program, if there's things that we didn't like that was going on, and things that we were like, wow, that really worked, sure that we captured it even before we got to the event. Because obviously all of you know here, whenever you're running a program, it's not just the event that matters, it's like the whole process. So just preparing that doc and then setting up a meeting after your event was something that we did. So we invited everybody that was involved in that meeting. So that was like our executive team and all various stakeholders. And then we sent them an email kind of saying like, hey, later this week or tomorrow, please come and be prepared to share feedback. And we're also adding structure in the feedback, right? Like we want it to be constructive, and we also want it to be honest. So like we wanted to hear kind of like maybe the hard truth, right? Like the stuff that we didn't want to hear, we also wanted to hear that. So how we added the structure was we broke it into like 4 L's. So we went around the room and said, Kat, what was what was one thing that you liked, one thing that you learned, one thing that you felt lacked out of this program, and what was one thing you longed for? And we asked every single person that was in this retro with us that question, that feedback into the various categories in that retro doc. And so we kind of bucketed. So I think that was really nice because we started hearing similar feedback as well. And then that really helped us figure out like, wow, the same person said that was a really +1. So it just added like to all of that. So this is kind of like how we structured our retro. And this is kind of like an example of our retro doc. So we started it off just kind of like, you know, what I kind of shared in the slides, like what is a retro? What should you expect? Why are we doing this? And then I'll share in the bottom, we kind of built out these tables. And then based on like how we organized our program, we had it kind of on these like 4 categories. So the first one was just on the foundation building. This is a new program for us. So like, how did we do on like building this program, planning, communicating it internally? That was kind of all that was included in bucket 1. Bucket 2 was recruitment. And we kind of had 3 stages in our recruitment process. That first one was nominations from the field. The second one was once we had all of these nominations, how did we like take that from like 100 to 20? And then once those 20 were picked, like how did we start reaching out to the customers, and how did they like agree to it? And if they didn't agree to it or they couldn't make it, like we had a process for like, who were we going to go next? Like we almost had like a wait list, like a tier 1 wait list and a tier 2 wait list. Then the next thing was like, okay, now let's get ready for the event, the pre-event preparation, and then the event itself, where you see topic 1 and topic 2. Like for example, topic 1 was opening, right? So Kat welcomed everybody. She did a great job, passed it on to topic 2, which in our case was our chief development officer, kind of showing the story of what ThoughtSpot's been able to do last year. And then the next topics were like the voice of the customer, et cetera, et cetera. And then so that way people were able to say like, hey, in Kat's opening, I really liked how she made a personal touch, you know, and like maybe, I don't know, she talk with her hands as much as I am, you know, like that could be like the feedback that could have been captured. And then the last one was just post-event. Like, how did we do with follow-ups? How are we doing with planning these ongoing events? All of that goodness. And so I hope that this kind of helps just share like how we're thinking of like efficiencies. And so I shared that doc with y'all. Hopefully it's helpful, but this is kind of what that looked like. I've also seen someone add like a 3rd column to this, where it's like green is what went well, red is what we could do better, and then yellow is like, what are some ideas for this? Kat and I just had everything under like, what could we do better? That's where we had our ideation. But if you want like a separate column to separate like new ideas, like cool ideas even, like you could have a third column in there, have it yellow for like ideas too. So yeah, I think this was really helpful for Kat and I, just because we were able to capture a lot of like pain points in our process. And then that way we could then, whenever we're launching this program again next year, like with a new class, we can go back to this doc and say like, hey, that didn't work. Or like, hey, this worked, but like we should probably go reach out to the sales team and make sure that this doesn't happen again. So it also keeps us honest, because like in a year's time, like we've gone through so much that we might not remember like everything. So it's really important to kind of capture it while you're there. And that was just like really helpful for us. So I think that was all I had. I don't think I had a slide at the end, but I'll take any questions and if anybody wants it. But let me also review any of the chats to see if there's any questions. But Kat or Kristie, was there anything that you wanted to kind of share from that question of like things in your program and lessons learned that you want to continue to add in your CAB moving forward?
I think for me, continuing to bring the ideas that we actually found from our retro. So the 4Ls really helped us, and those are ideas that we're now implementing here. And I think overall, I want to continue to learn, hopefully from, meeting folks like yourself that are running cabs, or, through self-research, is really understanding how to track the activities that our CAB members are being asked to do with our product team, and calculating an ROI for some of those activities, participation, and the product feedback. I myself am doing a lot of the manual collecting of tracking, but I'd love to hear from others in the future how they're doing this for their CAB programs, calculating that ROI. So future topic, maybe, if I nail it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to learn for the next year is how to have that balance of allowing folks to learn from each other, yet still putting structure in place so that doesn't just feel like open networking. When it comes to the debrief, I learned a lot. Thank you for that. That was great. One thing that we do is we also have, we use Confluence for our internal knowledge base. So we've got a area for anyone to access that in our organization. And that's where we put our high level statistics, such as show rate, any of our assets. So our docs that we've used, the slides that were used, the speakers that we had. So if anyone in the organization kind of just wants a highlight of what took place, they can find that on our Confluence page.
That's really cool. And I think, Danny, you had a question, which was like, what is the percentage of members you're seeing attend your meetings? I think that's a really good question. Kat has hands-on experience with this. Kat, I'll let you handle this one, since you're running kind of like our product-led sessions as like an auxiliary event from our November CAB.
Yeah, I was actually responding to Danny here in the chat, so I'll save the chat here and just answer it directly. For us, the first CAB event, we actually had, I want to say out of the 20 people we invited, we had 17 of them attend. So only 3 of them were unable to attend. One of them, one of their kids fell sick. So of course that is okay. We told them that we're recording the session. And the other 2, they just had conflicts that arose because of a last minute situation. And one of them even messaged us saying, hey, I'm so sorry I couldn't attend. I was actually utilizing ThoughtSpot to calculate the insights that one of my departments was using. So I hope you guys are understanding. And we said, of course. So to ensure that we got them back and kept them engaged and still felt welcome, since they weren't able to join our first CAB, we actually set up one-on-one meetings with our chief development officer, so that they still felt recognized, appreciated, and being a part of the CAB. So that first event was 17 out of 20 people, and I consider that a huge win. And follow-up interviews were happening for those 3 that couldn't attend for last minute situations. For our ancillary events, so our product sessions where they may not be joining, we understand that executives get quite busy. So we have been approaching it saying, hey, everyone, if you could attend and this agenda looks appealing, please RSVP. Here's a calendar invite in advance. But we really partner with product to make sure that they're building the content, the direction of what they want to do with the CAB members, and our community team here really program manages, leads the communication, and is really here on the supporting, almost the human element of, hey, let's put some structure behind all of this. Let's make sure that there's a process in place, and we're really partnering with our product leaders. They're the executive sponsors. They're the driving team, while we're over here supporting kind of the communications, the event logistics, and supporting them there. But for these product-led sessions, we have seen a higher drop-off rate for these, but we also have 3 of them. So they're able to split their time into one that they want to participate here. But we have made it known that they need to participate in our semi-annual event. So the one happening in the fall, which a majority of them did attend, and the one in the spring here soon. So I hope that answers the question of what we're seeing. We are seeing some high drop-off rates for the ancillary events, but for our structured CAB semi-annual ones, that attendance is required as a part of their membership here.
Well, thank you both for such a great conversation, and everybody in the chat who's been engaged, and Danny for keeping his camera on the whole time. We appreciate you. But yeah, I think, we'd love to hear if anybody has any topics to discuss in the future. I know a couple of different ones in that sheet, so I have it pinned to the very top. If you could just take like 2 minutes and just add your name in there, introduce yourself, if there's anything that you'd be willing to share with everybody. As we mentioned, like, we're all learning from each other. So like, this is a safe space to share your experience, and don't feel like you have to be a pro and know it all. Like, we're all growing. So I encourage you, if you have an experience that you feel like could be applicable to others, we'd love to hear it. So thank you again for the time. I hope everybody has a great week, and happy early Community Manager Appreciation Day on Monday. I hope everybody takes care and does something for your professional development or self-care. So thanks again, everybody. I'll share the recording, and we'll share the assets as well on our Slack channel.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.